Hello and welcome to the Theological Family Ministry Podcast. We're a podcast that is dedicated to discussing the issues of how the Bible comes to bear on family and children's ministries to help churches, children's ministry leaders, and parents to minister to the children that God has put in their care. And we are excited today to have two special guests. We've got David and Sally Michael. And if you know much about children's ministry, you probably have heard their name. They are they've been influential. The Lord has used them to kind of do the things that we're talking about in this, and so they've got a long track record of faithfulness to the Lord. So David and Sally, we're excited to learn from you in just a bit and want to find out how you're doing. But first, Tony, hadn't talked in a while, so how are you doing? How was Thanksgiving for you?
It was good. It was quite a fun experience. I enjoyed time in North Carolina with some family and made sure to eat up as much as I possibly can because I like to get my food in. And I had to make sure that I enjoyed bacon on my last day down there because it's not really time off unless I'm enjoying my bacon.
You do enjoy your pork.
Did you guys have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. We got to go up to see my in-laws, and it was a long car trip, but it was a good time to see my in-laws and my wife, see her family, because she lives pretty far away from them. So yeah, now, little backstory here. We tried to record with the Michaels before Thanksgiving, and we encountered all kinds of technical difficulties, and we saw their character. They were very gracious with us. But you said that you guys were going to be traveling as well. Did you have a good Thanksgiving, Dave and Sally?
We did. We spent the time with Sally's dad. This was it was a year ago that Sally's mom went to heaven, and so it was a bitter and sweet time together to have those memories of Thanksgiving pass and to be with Sally's dad, and it was a rich time.
Praise the Lord for that.
Praise the Lord.
So, Sally, are you from Minnesota then, or is that where you guys are from?
You know, I really hate when people ask me where I'm from because I never know how to answer the question because my dad was in the Navy for 20 years, which means I moved around a lot as a child.
Yeah.
I will say that I spent the last 38 years in Minnesota, so that is more home than anywhere else.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Well, we want to turn and have a conversation with you two, just to give our listeners a little bit more info on you guys, in case they're not familiar with you and your ministry. David serves as the pastor of Next Generations at College Park Church in Indianapolis, and prior to that, he was at Bethlehem Baptist Church, and he's also, now David, I'm not sure the exact title, but chairman of Children Desiring God, chairman of the board.
Well, actually right now I am. I was just elected chairman. So I'm chairman-elect of the Children Desiring God board right now. So, but they refer to me as the founder, co-founder with Sally of that organization, and one of the board members now.
Wonderful. Praise the Lord for that.
So, waiting for your inauguration.
Yeah. Now how many board members are there?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us, and so and a great group of people. We're actually we've only been in existence as a board for 2 years. We were under our parent organization, Desiring God, since our beginning back in 1998, and then just 2 years ago we became our own independent organization and formed our board and are on our way to a whole different organization now. So
yeah, okay. So that's exciting. Could you tell us about that, or is that something that it has to be hush hush for a while?
Tell us about
that new organization. You said it's going to be a whole new organization.
Right. Okay. So part of the arrangement to avoid confusion between the two organizations now, Desiring God asked us to consider taking Desiring God out of our name, and so we didn't think children would be necessarily a real helpful title. So, and I think this is actually, so it's still somewhat of a secret. We're going to be rolling it out in in March. So don't tell anybody. Anybody who's listening, please don't tell anybody. Let's not spoil.
Is this you in a corner listening?
Yeah.
But the name is Truth 78. Truth:78. It's linked to Psalm 78, which has been kind of our signature.
That's cool.
Psalm that we lay out our vision based on the first 8 verses or so of that psalm. And so it was, and we're committed to truth. And there's more we can say as the name rolls out further, but we're real excited about the identity now that's coming out.
Praise the Lord. That's exciting.
Well, and give a little background on Sally as well. Sally has also been a very vital part of Desiring God, and I'm sure David would say a compliment to his ministry. And she is a prolific author and has authored 8 books as well as curricula for children. And so she continues to devote her time to that as well. So Sally, thank you for joining us as well. I'm sure you have. Both of you have busy schedules, and so we appreciate you giving us some of your time to benefit churches and families. If you could tell us a little bit about how the two of you got involved in Next Generation Ministry.
Well, maybe I'll start, and Sally, you can step in here. The path was really interesting. I fell in love with a woman in 1974 who was I'm still in love with her, and she was pretty passionate about children's ministry. She was a children's education or Christian education major at the college where we met, and I heard for the first time just this passion for teaching children the church, and this spunky Italian who was very, very committed to teaching children, and it was being birthed there. And so her passion has kind of rubbed off on me over the years, and yet children's ministry was not at all on my radar. I was passionate about urban ministry, trained for that, headed out to Minneapolis to get more theological training, and went right from there into urban ministry. 2 years into that, we started attending Bethlehem Baptist Church. We started a month after John Piper came as pastor of that church, and sat under his ministry. And here I am now. I was probably 27 years old or so at that time, growing up in a Christian home, going to a solid Bible Christian college, and attending a solid evangelical theological seminary, and seeing God in ways I'd never seen him before. The glory of God was more glorious than anything I had ever experienced of God. My whole theological paradigm changed in terms of just, I'm working in the city trying to reach unbelievers with the gospel and thinking I could just love them enough to bring them into the gospel, and realized there's this reality of the hard heart that is impenetrable with all the kindness and good deeds. It doesn't connect, and realizing that this is an impossible task. And then hearing, my whole world was changed, just coming to understand that God rules the heart. And what some would say takes all the zeal for evangelism out was the very thing that brought it into my world, where realizing that God is sovereign over the heart of an individual just fueled passion for that God and fueled hope for the city and all of that. So the concern was, why was it that I'm 27 years old with all that Christian experience and hearing about this God for the first time in my life? And then we started having children. So we had 2 children that we welcomed into our home beginning in 1981. So right as we were starting, and going into our Sunday school rooms, realizing where the problem was for me, why it was that I hadn't heard of this God, because we were showing our children a very different God than what we were hearing from the pulpit. So downstairs, we're hearing the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, and seeing this Jesus who is able to satisfy the needs of his people. And he did it with a loaf and a couple loaves and a fish, and multiplied it to feed thousands. And pointing to the glory of Christ. Upstairs, we hear the same lesson. Our kids are hearing the same lesson, and it's about a little boy who shares his lunch. And you should share too, because 5,000 people got fed because a little boy shared his lunch. So let's all share, realizing that we were hiding this truth from our children. And this, over time at Bethlehem, was just burdening us because we were seeing this glorious God that was being hidden from our children because, just by the way we're telling our Bible stories. And so that if you know us, we do feel passionately about what we're doing, and that people of Bethlehem saw that, and one thing led to another, and they asked us, would you consider coming and leading our children's ministry? And we said we would if we could use different material, and we couldn't find material to teach. And so I turned to my wife and I said, I will teach nothing before we will continue teaching what we've been teaching our kids. Can you write something? And so I remember the lunch meeting with John Piper, and I said, okay, here's what will persuade me. Number one, can we pursue this vision in this way? Number two, I can't do this without my wife. And so, Sally, you may want to pick up the story there.
That's cool. Now, before you do, I want to say, it's nice, Ben, that we've never encountered any kind of curriculum that does things like focus on a boy helping others instead of the great God.
You are blessed.
Never
man
happens
indeed.
anymore, does it? So no other curriculums have that. I understand the problem, so I think we both felt similar to you at different points. But go ahead.
I was busy homeschooling my two girls. They were then at that time then in junior high and high school when David and John Piper hatched this idea.
Okay.
I said, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. At my time is after my kids are all raised. And John Piper had a very dangerous question that he asked, and that was, will you pray about it?
Yeah.
Well, how do you say, no, I won't pray about it? So I did. And I was studying the Word one day, and I came to Luke 5, where the disciples had been out fishing all night, and they came in, they hadn't caught anything, and Jesus told them to push out into the deep again and put their nets down. And Peter said, Lord, we've been fishing all night, but at your word, I'll put the nets down. And they had a great catch of fish. Yeah. And in my heart, I knew my excuses were the same. It's not the right time. This is not the way you do this. This is not my plan. Yeah. But at your word, I'll do it. And so I said, okay, Lord, this is not my agenda, not my plan, not my timing. But if this is what you want, I will do it. And he has brought great fruitfulness from it. So I homeschooled my children, continued to homeschool my children, and worked at the church part-time. And then my husband said, you need to write material. And I said, well, I don't know how to do that, figuring that's the end of that. I said, I'll go look for something. And I looked and couldn't find anything. And he said, well, you're going to have to write something. I said, well, I'm going to look some more. So I looked more and I couldn't find anything. And he said, well, you're going to have to write this. And I said, David, I don't know how to write children's curriculum. And he said, but God does. You can't argue with that, right? No. You need to ask him how to do it. And so I corralled my friend Jill Nelson, who we had talked for years on how to teach the Bible to children. And I said, listen, if I'm doing this, you're doing it with me. And that's how it started.
I didn't realize Jill Nelson goes all the way back to the beginning like that.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful.
We're thankful that you did pray about it, and the Lord has used you.
Oh, extraordinarily so, yeah. God has certainly blessed many churches.